Princess Alindra Vale stood on the high balcony of the Velarin royal citadel, looking out at the shining towers of her homeworld. The city was beautiful, built of glass, silver, stone, and flowing light. But even its elegance could not hide the fear growing in the hearts of the Velarin people. Their territory had survived the last war, but every victory had cost too much. Their armies were smaller, their ships damaged, and their economy strained. The galaxy sensed weakness. Many predicted that another war was coming, and the next one might destroy them completely. Alindra knew this too. She had grown up surrounded by strategy councils, reports, and the numbers of fallen soldiers. The throne she would someday inherit felt heavier with every passing year. She wanted peace for her people, yet peace seemed to drift farther away, no matter how much she fought for it. Then the Terran Union offered a solution. Instead of forming a temporary alliance or trade agreement, they proposed something unheard of in recent galactic politics: a political marriage. A binding union between the future ruler of Velarin and one of their own. Such a bond would join the two superpowers in a single fate. Neither side would dare wage war without harming their own prospects. Many believed it could stop bloodshed for generations. Her council debated for cycles, and she listened. Some called the humans primitive warriors. Others warned that their technological growth rate was rising too fast. Many feared their emotional intensity, but Alindra saw something else. She saw a species that had survived countless challenges in a short time. Humanity was not old compared to the Velarin, yet they advanced at a speed that alarmed every other empire. Their adaptability was famous, their stubbornness even more so. She considered it carefully. Marriages of state were not new to her people. But marrying a human was different. They lived shorter lives. They expressed emotions openly, and they had reputations for unpredictable thought. But peace was worth sacrifice. If she had to bind her life to someone she had never met to save millions of her citizens, she would do it. So, she accepted. The Terran Union named their representative. His name was Commander Marcus Hale, a decorated military officer who had served in multiple defense campaigns. He was not a politician, not a noble, not a bureaucrat. He was a soldier. The choice surprised Alindra. A soldier, becoming a royal spouse, was not a traditional human path either. Perhaps the Terran Union wanted to show that they were offering more than a soft diplomatic face. They were offering someone who understood the price of war. On the day Marcus arrived, the entire capital gathered. Velarin soldiers stood in perfect formation, while nobles watched from terraces and balconies. Alindra stood at the foot of the landing platform, dressed in silver ceremonial armor befitting a royal marriage conducted in time of conflict. She expected a tall, cold diplomat, a man who would speak in rehearsed lines and stiff gestures. The starship landed. A moment later, the entry ramp lowered, and Marcus Hale stepped out. He was taller than most Velarin, broad-shouldered, with short dark hair and eyes that moved alertly through the crowd. He did not look like a man arriving for a royal celebration. He looked like a soldier arriving at a battlefield, checking terrain and exits automatically. When his eyes met Alindra's, he gave a small, respectful bow. No arrogance, no hesitation, no fear. Alindra was surprised. Humans were rumored to be loud, expressive, and unrestrained. But Marcus stood straight and calm. A soldier, aware of the weight of the moment. She stepped forward and greeted him in formal tones. He responded with simple words, not ceremonial or complicated. His voice was steady, grounded. They walked together through the palace halls, greeting noble leaders and foreign ambassadors. Marcus did not speak much, but when he did, his words were thoughtful and careful. Alindra found herself watching him more than expected, trying to understand him. He was different from the Valoran officers she knew. Human soldiers were shaped by history and necessity. They had not always had the most powerful technology, so they became experts in rapid learning, quick adaptation, and hard survival. Later, during a private audience, Alindra spoke first. "You understand the importance of this marriage," she said. "It is not a personal bond. It is a political anchor. For peace." Marcus nodded without hesitation. "I do understand. I have seen war too closely to take peace lightly." Alindra had expected diplomacy, scripted promises of loyalty. But instead, she heard sincerity. His emotions were visible in his eyes, not hidden like those of her own people. Humans were direct in their honesty. She was not used to that. "You have served in many battles," she said. "More than I care to count," he admitted. "Humans learn quickly, but that means we also pay for our lessons. I would rather future generations not learn the same way." That answer stayed with her. It was not the response of a man eager for medals or reputation. It was the response of someone who had seen too many soldiers fall. The official marriage ceremony followed. Velarin customs were long and symbolic. Marcus followed each instruction carefully, even when the rituals were strange to him. He looked slightly uncomfortable in the flowing ceremonial robes, but he did not complain. Alindra respected that. The ceremony ended with their hands joined in silver light, forming the union bond that signified shared destiny between their worlds. The people celebrated, but many still held doubts. Some Valoran nobles whispered that humans were too dangerous, too aggressive. Some human observers wondered whether the Valoran court was too passive, too traditional. Marcus and Alindra both heard these things, though neither spoke of them that night. When the celebrations were over, Alindra walked Marcus to the guest chambers prepared for him. She expected him to retire quietly, but instead, he paused before entering. "Princess," he said, "I know I am a stranger in your world. If I misstep, tell me. I need to learn quickly." Alindra found herself answering with honesty. "Then, we both must learn. I know little of humanity that is not from reports and history documents." Marcus gave a small smile. "Reports rarely capture what matters most." Alindra was not sure whether humans were simple or remarkably complex. Perhaps both. She returned to her private chamber later and stood once again at the balcony. Below her, the capital glowed beneath the night sky, towers shining like crystal. She had married not for love, but for peace, a strategic decision, a duty. Yet she could not shake the feeling that the universe had shifted in some unseen way. She had expected to gain an ally. Instead, she might have gained someone who fought for peace, not with diplomacy, but with lived experience. Someone who, if needed, would stand like a shield between her people and the destruction they feared. She only hoped peace would hold long enough for her people to learn what kind of man humanity had sent her. Marcus Hale woke early on his first morning in the Velarin royal palace. Human military habits still lived in him. Wake before the sun, evaluate surroundings, prepare for the day ahead. The palace rooms were comfortable, almost luxurious, but he felt restless. Everything here was too still, too quiet. If this had been a military station, there would have been distant boots marching, drills being shouted, engines humming in the hangars. Instead, only soft morning music played through the palace speakers, a gentle greeting to start the day peacefully. It was beautiful, but unfamiliar. He dressed in formal Velarin attire, though he felt a strong desire for his old uniform. The long robe-style clothing looked elegant, but restricted his movement. Still, he respected that this was now his duty. He had come, not as a soldier, but as a symbol of peace. At least, that was what both governments claimed. When he exited his chambers, a young Velarin attendant guided him through silver-lit corridors toward the morning council session. The palace was alive with quiet activity servants preparing breakfast halls, diplomats moving with calm precision, officers discussing schedules in low voices. Marcus noticed something immediately. Everything in Valoran society ran through protocol. Every movement, every sentence, every greeting had rules. He wondered how they ever made decisions during emergencies. He entered the council chamber and found Princess Alindra already speaking with several advisors. She stood tall, calm, wearing royal armor that shimmered faintly even in subtle light. Her posture and presence made it clear she was born to lead. Marcus gave a respectful bow, to which she nodded politely. One of the council members, a severe-looking elder named Lord Sarenth, examined Marcus with thinly disguised doubt. When Marcus sat beside Alindra, Sarenth spoke in a formal tone. We were discussing border activity, minor incursions along the outer lanes, nothing that requires panic. Marcus listened quietly before responding. Incursions are never minor, unless understood fully. What data do you have? In quote. Several council members exchanged glances. Humans usually waited until spoken to in Velarin courts, but Marcus had spoken directly, without waiting for permission. Sarenth frowned. Another advisor sighed softly. Alindra, however, seemed more thoughtful than offended. With a small gesture, she ordered the holoscreen activated. Battle maps and sensor logs flickered into the air. Marcus leaned forward, studying them like a man used to interpreting tactical information. The logs showed small but strategic strikes, supply raiders, probing attacks, fleet scouts that vanished after short engagements. Marcus recognized the pattern almost immediately. It was not random. The same enemy? Alindra asked, noticing his focused expression. Marcus nodded slowly. This looks like Ravlun testing behavior. They are trying to learn your response time. They want to know if you are too slow to defend a border before a fleet arrives. Several council members stiffened. Sarenth shook his head. We do not escalate without confirmation. Velarin history teaches calm responses prevent war. Marcus knew he had to choose his words carefully. I understand restraint, but if this is Ravlun's strategy, they are reading your hesitation as weakness. The council fell silent. Some looked irritated, others curious. Alindra watched Marcus with careful interest. She could already see cultural difference at work. Velarin noble leaders valued patience, diplomacy, and consensus. Humans, especially soldiers, valued prevention and reaction speed. After the meeting ended, Alindra approached Marcus as the others left the chamber. You speak differently than our council is accustomed to, she said. Marcus nodded. I know. On Earth, discussions in war councils are less formal. If someone sees danger, they speak immediately. Alindra clasped her hands behind her back. You surprise them. I noticed. Marcus replied with a faint, wry smile. She walked with him through the hallway. Sunlight from tall windows lit their path. Servants bowed as they passed. You were honest, Alindra said. Velarin Council values careful words over quick ones, but I found your insight useful. Marcus appreciated her straightforward response. It reminded him of commanding officers he respected, not weak, not afraid, but willing to evaluate new information. They continued walking until they reached the royal gardens. Alindra motioned toward a shaded path of crystalline trees. Will you walk for a moment? I would like to understand more about how humans think. Marcus agreed. As they walked, she asked the first question. You analyze threats quickly. Is that trained or natural to your people? Both, Marcus answered. Human history is short but violent. We didn't always have powerful weapons or fleets, so we learned fast, or we were destroyed. That mindset has stayed with us. Alindra listened attentively. Our people consider emotional control a sign of maturity. Humanity seems more open. Marcus chuckled. We try to think logically, but humans feel deeply. Emotion sends us to war. Emotion also makes us sacrifice everything to protect what matters. She looked intrigued. Your reputation in the galaxy ranges from foolishly brave to dangerously unpredictable. Marcus gave a small nod. Fair. Humans can be both. A nearby diplomatic official approached and bowed. Your Highness, you are expected in the throne hall for the ambassador reception. Alindra glanced at Marcus. You are welcome to attend. Marcus followed her to the reception, where nobles from various families gathered. The hall was filled with silks, light crystal banners, and music soft enough to allow conversation. Yet the moment Marcus entered, many eyes turned toward him. Some nodded politely. Others whispered behind hands. He felt their scrutiny, like a pressure in the room. One noblewoman approached Alindra. Your Highness, may I speak freely? Alindra nodded. The noblewoman looked Marcus over and said quietly, We hope this union does not bring human military behavior to our palace. Valoran society is refined. About it to now. Ender live. Alindra. Valoran society. Marcus did not respond. But Alindra answered in a calm but firm voice. Commander Hale is here as an ally, not a disruptor. Our people might benefit from understanding our partner, rather than fearing him. The noblewoman bowed and retreated. Marcus exhaled, slowly. You defended me, he said. I defended the treaty, she corrected, though her tone was not harsh. As the event continued, Marcus attempted to be respectful and diplomatic. He tried Valoran formal greetings, careful speech patterns, and slow measured posture. It was difficult. Everything in him wanted to speak directly. But he understood that earning trust would take more than strategic skill. Later, when they returned to the palace corridor, Alindra said, Marcus shook his head. I'm trying to learn. Whether your people accept me or not. I need to understand how they see the galaxy. Peace won't survive if humans and Valoran cannot work together. She slowed her steps, studying his expression. You are not what I expected, Commander. What did you expect? He asked. A loud, aggressive human warrior, too impatient for diplomacy. Marcus laughed lightly. Some of us are like that. But if I acted like that here, I would cause more trouble than I prevent. Alindra realized something subtle then. Humans might be emotional, but they were also adaptable. Marcus was changing himself, not for personal comfort, but for the mission and for peace. As they parted for the night, she said softly, You are beginning to understand this place. Perhaps soon, they will begin to understand you. Marcus bowed and returned to his chambers. Lying in bed that night, he stared at the ceiling, thinking of the growing tension around the borders. Ravlun movements were not harmless. He could feel it in his bones. Something was coming, and he only hoped Valoran would be ready. In her own room, Alindra stood by the window again, gazing at the capital's quiet lights. The marriage had not been her choice. But now she sensed that destiny had given her something unexpected. A human who could challenge her world, not through force, but through truth. Both of them drifted into restless sleep, unaware that the next conflict would not wait long. Their cultures were already learning from each other, but soon they would be forced to fight side by side, or lose everything they were trying so hard to protect. Tension in the Valoran capital slowly grew over the next several days. At first, only small reports arrived, unidentified ships near the border, missing cargo convoys, communication interference in remote systems. The council called them minor events. But Marcus Hale recognized the signs of something larger. Ravlun tactics were predictable to him in a dangerous way. They always tested defenses before attacking. They gathered intelligence while appearing non-threatening. Marcus had seen it in other sectors when he served with Terran fleets. But many Valoran advisors still resisted the idea of reacting strongly. Their society believed in calm reasoning before making serious decisions. They wanted confirmation, analysis, complete data, things Marcus knew time might not allow. He tried to respect their culture. But each new report increased his concern. The first major council meeting after the marriage was larger than before. All senior military and government leaders attended, along with Princess Alindra and her new human husband. Marcus stood near her, trying to remain silent unless spoken to. He understood now that interrupting too quickly could offend the elders. General Duril, a Velarin officer with silver hair and strong posture, presented the latest tactical reports. As the map shifted on the holo display, Marcus's jaw clenched slightly. Ravloon's ships had moved closer, and not simply in scouting formations. Their distribution was wide, covering multiple approach routes. It was the kind of map that suggested preparation for a sudden offensive. General Duril spoke calmly, as if discussing ordinary border updates. Their presence has increased, but no attack has occurred. We recommend additional monitoring and diplomatic communication channels. Several council members nodded. Marcus waited, hoping someone would recognize the danger. No one did. When Alindra turned her eyes toward him, probably sensing his stiffness, he took that silent invitation to speak. "I have seen this exact formation before," he said. "If Ravloon patterns have not changed, they are preparing for coordinated strikes." The room became very quiet. Some officers looked defensive, others doubtful. Lord Sarenth exhaled slowly, the same way one would react to a student speaking out of turn. "Commander Hale," Sarenth said, "our intelligence has not confirmed hostile intent. We do not move armies because of assumptions." Marcus kept his voice controlled. "They are not assumptions. If you wait for confirmation, the attack will already be happening." A younger officer spoke sharply. "Terrans always think war is the first answer." Marcus looked at him directly. "Terrans think preparation prevents taking heavy losses on day one." Alindra raised her hand, stopping further argument. "We asked Earth to join us to prevent war, not to start it. But Marcus has knowledge from experience. Ignoring that could be unwise." Sarenth's expression shifted, still not convinced but aware of the princess's authority. "What do you propose, Commander Hale?" Marcus stepped forward and tapped several points on the holo display. "Move fleets to these systems. Prepare reserve forces here, where they can respond within hours. Activate deep sensors along this line. If the Ravloon push, these positions give you early advantage. You do not need to fire a shot. Just be ready." Some council members murmured quietly. Alindra studied the map. Marcus waited, thinking she might reject the plan. But instead, she turned to her generals. "How quickly can readiness be raised without signaling aggression?" General Duril answered. "We can reposition forces slowly over 60 hours. That gives cover under routine patrol patterns." Marcus shook his head. "Too slow." Duril frowned. "We do not rush military deployments." Marcus replied, "In human history, armies that moved slowly lost their first battles." It was not meant as an insult, but the statement hit hard. Alindra looked at Marcus with narrowed eyes, not angry, but calculating. She needed to choose between tradition and reality. And she knew her people feared rapid militarization because it might be seen as provocation. She finally spoke with calm authority. "We will reposition fleets over 30 hours. It is still faster than standard protocol, but not so sudden as to cause panic or diplomatic misunderstanding." Marcus exhaled slightly. Not perfect, but better than nothing. Some generals looked uneasy, but obeyed her order. When the council session ended, Marcus walked with Alindra through the long corridor again. The tension in his shoulders was obvious. "You think we are moving too slowly?" she said. "Yes," he answered honestly. "But I understand your limit. You lead a culture that values stability." She turned her head slightly, studying him. "You handle frustration in silence better than I expected." He smiled faintly. "Experience." But deep inside, Marcus was uneasy. 30 hours might not be enough. That night, long after the palace dimmed its lights, 4 Ravloon ships crossed into Velarin territory without broadcasting identity signatures. They moved fast, targeting separate relay stations. At the same time, communications interference increased near 3 star lanes. The incident was subtle, but anyone trained in tactical analysis would see the truth. Marcus was awake at 0400, reviewing reports on the palace data console. His old instincts had woken him before the alert even came. Minutes later, an emergency signal triggered throughout the palace. Alindra was already in motion when Marcus reached the strategy center. The holomap was full of data. Officers rushed about in controlled panic. General Durrill was issuing orders, but the fleet responses were not yet coordinated. Marcus stepped to Alindra's side. "It has begun," he said simply. She nodded. "The council is assembling again. They want confirmation." Marcus almost laughed out of disbelief. "Confirmation? They are attacking your communication grid." Alindra turned her eyes toward him. "I understand, but I must follow procedure until the council authorizes full defense response." Marcus took a deep breath. His heart said to act immediately, to order ships into combat positions and intercept the Ravlun fleet. But this was not his command. He had sworn to respect their system. Lord Sarenth arrived moments later, looking pale. "We cannot escalate, based on preliminary sensor reports." Marcus pointed at the screen. "Those are not preliminary. They are disabling your warning network." Sarenth hesitated. The scene around him was loud, with officer reports and flashing alerts. Slowly, he began realizing the truth. Alindra spoke in a voice filled with command. "Enough. We cannot wait any longer. General Durrill, activate emergency defense posture. Marcus Hale, assist him directly." Silence fell. Velarin officers rarely ceded strategic control to outsiders. But Alindra had made the choice, and it carried the weight of royal authority. General Durrill grimaced but nodded. "Very well. Commander Hale, join the tactical console." Marcus moved forward quickly. His fingers flew across the interface, pulling fleet positions, estimated Ravlun approach vectors, and predicted next targets. Durrill watched as Marcus created real-time battle modeling faster than most of the staff could follow. Marcus issued instructions with firm clarity. "Shift the first fleet to the Arion corridor. Organize rapid response strike groups in sectors 8 and 9. Prepare interdiction sweeps to break their momentum." Officers relayed orders. The room changed. Suddenly, instead of confusion, people had direction. Alindra watched, amazed. She had known he was a soldier, but she had expected a diplomat in uniform. Instead, he was something entirely different. A battlefield leader who could take chaos and shape it into control. Within 30 minutes, the Velarin defense network began to respond effectively. The first Ravlun strikes scattered when fleets moved unexpectedly fast. Intercept groups cut off escape routes. Communications started returning. Alindra realized how much her people had underestimated humanity. Marcus had not shouted, had not shown anger, yet he took command the moment danger appeared. Humanity had a different relationship with conflict. They did not fear acknowledging war. They feared losing it. By the time dawn touched the capital towers, the first wave of Ravlun attacks had been contained. But Marcus knew this was only the beginning. Ravlun never stopped after one test. They would strike again harder, in greater numbers. Alindra stood beside Marcus in the quiet after the storm and asked softly, "How did you learn to react so quickly?" He answered without arrogance. "Humans never had the luxury of slow decisions. We survived because someone always stood up before it was too late." Alindra looked at him with new understanding. She had married a symbol of peace, but she now saw the truth. Peace from humanity was not gentle peace. It was peace guarded by those who had seen war and refused to let it happen again. The Valoran Dominion had thought they were marrying tradition to diplomacy. Instead, they had brought into their palace a man prepared to fight like a storm, if that was what survival required. And soon, the galaxy would learn it too. The next 48 hours changed everything inside the Veloran Dominion. The Ravlun had pushed harder than expected, sending more ships and more coordinated attacks against outer systems. Their strategy was clear to Marcus Hale, the moment new intel arrived. They were testing defenses, forcing the Veloran to reveal their tactics, hoping to tire them before a large invasion. Marcus had seen this pattern in 2 different sectors during his earlier campaigns. Ravlun commanders respected one thing only: overwhelming strength. If they sensed hesitation, they would not stop. The Defense Council now understood that the situation was no longer theory. Their borders had been breached 3 times. Outposts had gone silent, and 1 Veloran patrol fleet had taken heavy damage. The palace halls were no longer filled with calm voices. Officers walked quickly. Messengers rushed through corridors. Tactical maps flickered constantly, with new red markers showing enemy movements. Marcus was now inside the main command chamber almost constantly, coordinating with General Duril, fleet captains, and intelligence officers. He barely slept, grabbing short rest whenever a battle sector stabilized briefly. His mind ran calculations faster than many of the automated systems. Veloran officers watched with respect as he moved between consoles, analyzing Ravlun positions, adjusting patrol paths, and designing counterstrikes. His style was unlike theirs: fast, direct, and always prepared for the worst outcome. Princess Alindra, meanwhile, spent countless hours at his side. She had grown up among scholars and royal advisors, learning to think through problems with diplomacy and patience. But now she was seeing a different way of leadership, one that acted with urgency, but still with clear purpose. Marcus never acted emotionally, only decisively. Watching him made her understand why humans were feared and admired across the stars. During one planning session, General Duril pointed to a sector where Ravlun ships were gathering. They are forming near the Kelnar Gate. If they take that passage, they gain direct access to 3 core systems. End quote. Marcus zoomed the projection. They're not attacking Kelnar. That's a distraction. They want us to move our main fleet there, so they can hit the other side. Duril frowned. How can you be certain? Marcus tapped another area. Because this cluster of small ships is disappearing from sensors. They're going dark and spreading out. That means they're jumping for a new vector. Ravlun always create false pressure before the real strike. Alindra watched the patterns forming on the map. She saw the evolving picture, something the council might not have caught until it was too late. Marcus continued. We need a fast response strike group waiting here. They will head straight for the real attack point the moment the enemy reveals it. Duril considered this. That requires human-style, rapid deployment. Veloran tactics. Move. Methodically. Marcus replied quietly. Methodical reactions lose the second battle. Ravlun will not wait. Alindra broke the pause. Prepare the strike group. Use the new mixed fleet. Terran ships are faster. Veloran ships have stronger shields. Together they can respond quickly and survive. Duril nodded and began issuing the command. Marcus looked at Alindra with appreciation. She had made a decisive choice, without hesitation. Later, when the chamber momentarily quieted, Alindra spoke to Marcus privately. You look tired, she said. Marcus gave a faint, tired smile. I've had worse days. Her eyes softened. You fight, as though you feel responsible for everything happening. He looked at the star map. I have seen what happens when preparation comes too late. I don't want that here. Not again. Alindra understood there was history behind those words, but she did not ask. Human warriors often carried scars that did not show. Before she could speak further, an alarm blared. Fleet sensors detected a sudden jump distortion in a different sector exactly where Marcus had predicted. The Ravlun assault had begun. The simulated models Marcus created matched perfectly with reality. Officers scrambled, and orders flew across the room. The newly formed strike group launched within minutes. Marcus moved from station to station, coordinating allied ships. Veleran tactical officers were stunned by how quickly he shifted strategies. Where they preferred long planning sessions, Marcus adapted in real time. He adjusted firing patterns, changed formation shapes, and allowed captains to take risks. Veleran military culture usually avoided. Yet those risks paid off. In the first hour of combat, the Terran Veleran strike group successfully stopped the Ravlun from capturing a major warp gate. Alindra watched the live feed. Human ships, smaller but faster, darted between enemy vessels, distracting them. Veleran capital cruisers delivered heavy blasts from behind shield walls. Together, they looked like a single machine made of different parts, one that had never existed until this marriage. On the Ravlun flagship, the enemy commander realized something had changed. Veleran defenses were no longer slow or predictable. Someone new was directing the fight. Someone who understood Ravlun war patterns and who adapted faster than the enemy expected. Back in the command chamber, Alindra listened as officers reported victory in the sector. The room breathed easier, but only slightly. Marcus stood still, focused on charts, as if searching for the next move before it happened. General Duril stepped close. "Commander Hale, your strategies are working." "I admit that." Marcus nodded. "This is only the second wave. Ravlun do not stop until they break something." Duril swallowed. "How much time do we have?" Marcus answered without emotion. "Not much. The next assault will be larger and aimed at the heart." Alindra's expression tightened. "You believe they intend a direct strike at Valoria?" "Yes," Marcus said. "If they break the capital, they think the rest will collapse." A Veleran officer stepped forward. "Do we move the royal family off-world?" Alindra immediately shook her head. "If I run, panic will spread faster than any enemy fleet." "1. Duril turned to Marcus. "What do we do?" Quaing. Marcus zoomed the map again. "We need to change our doctrine. Veleran ships are powerful, but react slowly, because every order goes through too many approvals. That has to stop now. Give fleet captains situational authority to change formation and tactics without waiting for the council." Duril's eyebrows rose. "That level of autonomy is unprecedented." Alindra supported Marcus. "If we fight a new kind of war, we must adapt to new rules." The order was given. Minutes later, Valoran captains received new operational freedom. Some were nervous, others excited. Combined fleets began to move more fluidly, more unpredictably, more like humans fought. As the fleets repositioned, Alindra finally stepped away from the maps, needing a breath. Marcus followed her to the balcony, overlooking the city. The sky was dark, not from night, but from the fleet shields shimmering at high altitude. They were protecting the capital from any orbital bombardment. Alindra spoke first. "This world has stood for 7,000 years with calm leadership. Now, it feels like everything is changing overnight." Marcus answered quietly. "Sometimes, peace survives only because someone is willing to fight for it." She looked at him, truly seeing him. "I understand now why humanity advances so quickly. You treat every challenge like a life and death moment." Marcus leaned on the balcony rail, eyes distant. She felt a strange mix of sadness and admiration. Humans lived shorter lives, but they burned brighter. Marcus was proof of that. He was exhausted, stretched thin, but still ready to fight again the moment sensors lit up. At that moment, alarms sounded again from the command room. Marcus stood up sharply. Alindra followed. As they ran back down the long corridor, an officer shouted the new report. Multiple Ravloon fleets have jumped into the edge of the system. Estimated main invasion force. The moment Alindra stepped back into the chamber, every symbol on the tactical map turned red. The capital was under direct threat. Marcus looked at the display with unreadable calm. This is it. The main attack. Alindra stood beside him. Then we hold. Marcus nodded once. Together. As the fleets engaged outside in the dark void, Alindra realized this was no longer a symbolic marriage or a distant political move. It was a bond being tested in the fire of real war. Humans and Valoran, fighting side by side, learning each other's strengths, surviving only because they trusted one another. And for the first time in generations, the Valoran began to understand why humans were described as stars, bright, relentless, burning themselves if necessary to push back the darkness. Alindra stood on the balcony of the command ship, watching the quiet stars outside. The battle was over. The Ravloon fleet had finally retreated, leaving broken engines, drifting debris, and silent darkness behind them. For the first time in weeks, the Dominion border was calm, but Alindra could still feel the echo of explosions in her mind. Like the heartbeat of war refusing to fade, her people had survived. And they had survived because of humans, because of Marcus. She closed her eyes and took a slow breath. The air of the command ship smelled of metal, recycled oxygen, and faint traces of smoke carried from damaged sections. It was not a pleasant scent, but it was real. It proved they were alive. Down in the recovery bay, soldiers rested. Valoran officers healed beside Terran Marines, sharing water, food, and quiet words. No one seemed to care anymore which planet the other came from. For the first time in history, they were not two armies. They were one. Marcus was not among the resting soldiers. He was still in the medical wing, being treated for exhaustion, burns, and muscle damage. Alindra had not seen him since the battle ended. She had commanded the last stage of the engagement herself, while Marcus collapsed on the front line after pushing far beyond safe limits. He had fought until his body could not move anymore. She had promised herself she would visit him as soon as the situation was stable. Now, as the reports calmed and emergency lights were slowly replaced by standard white illumination, she finally had the time. Her steps echoed through the corridor as she walked. Valoran guards and Terran medics saluted as she passed. She nodded in return, though her thoughts were far away. She had married Marcus for peace, not expecting anything beyond duty. She had seen him at first as a polite stranger with strong hands and a friendly smile. She could never have imagined she would one day stand in a hallway, anxious to see if he was all right. Two Valoran healers stood outside the medical room. They bowed and moved aside when they saw her. "He is awake," one of them said softly, "but tired. Do not keep him standing long." She nodded and entered. Marcus sat on a medical bed, his upper body bandaged and one leg raised on support. His eyes were half open, showing tiredness deep in the lines of his face. Yet when he saw her, he smiled in the same warm way he always had. "You look better than the last report said," Alindra said, trying to keep her voice controlled. Marcus chuckled weakly. "Reports always make things sound worse. I'm fine. Just sore." She walked closer and sat beside him. For a moment, neither spoke. She looked at his injuries, then at his hands, hands that had led soldiers, commanded fleets, and struck like lightning. She thought of how different they were. She had been raised in palaces, surrounded by ceremony and logic. He had been formed on Earth, where survival had never been guaranteed, and humanity learned to fight with everything they had. "You should have pulled back," she said quietly. "You could have died." "I could have," he admitted. "But if I had stopped, the line would have collapsed. And then, we all could have died." Alindra looked away. He said it like a soldier, practical and without pride. He hadn't fought for glory. He had fought to protect. You scared my entire command center, she said. Sorry about that. She gave a small smile. I think they are finally starting to understand what humanity is. Marcus raised an eyebrow. And what is that? Not savages. Not unpredictable monsters. Just people who refuse to fall down when others need them. She paused, then added, My people needed you. And you answered. Marcus leaned back, wincing at the pain in his muscles. My soldiers did the same. Your soldiers fought beside mine. I saw Valoran officers covering human squads with shield rotations. I saw Marines carrying Valoran tacticians out of fire zones. It wasn't one side saving the other. It was both sides saving each other. Alindra felt warmth spread in her chest. She had never heard him speak like a politician. He spoke simply, honestly, like a man who had seen more than most rulers ever would. Outside the window, small repair drones floated by, sealing holes in the hull. The galaxy was quiet for now. But Alindra knew that political consequences would soon come. The Dominion Senate would demand reports. Earth's leaders would want details. Treaties would need adjusting. New laws would have to be written. Their marriage, once a symbol of uncertain peace, had become the pillar of a new age. It will not be easy, she whispered. It never is, Marcus replied. But we won the first battle together. That's something no treaty or alliance can take away. Alindra looked at him again. Really looked. She saw not a stranger, not a husband forced into position, but a partner, someone who carried the weight of others willingly, even when it brought pain. You know, she said slowly. When I agreed to this marriage, I expected a diplomatic puppet, a quiet politician, who would stay out of the way. Marcus laughed softly. That's not really my specialty. Was. No, she admitted. It is not. Silence settled for a moment, comfortable and calm. Alindra, Marcus said quietly. I know you didn't choose this marriage because you wanted it. I didn't either. But if you want a real partnership, not just for peace, but for life, I am willing. She blinked, surprised by the honesty. She had expected many difficult conversations before reaching such a point. Instead, the moment was simple and clear. I think, she said softly, we already began that partnership when the first shots were fired. I think we have Team Suv. I. Marcus smiled, eyes half closed with exhaustion. Then, I'm glad. Alindra stood when she noticed his fatigue increasing. Rest. The fleet needs you strong when you return. And you? He asked. She turned toward the door. My people need me strong too. As she stepped out of the room, she realized something quietly powerful. She was no longer walking solely as a princess, nor as a forced bride. She walked as a leader with someone who understood the burden she carried. In the following days, messages flooded in from across the Dominion. Valoran citizens who once feared humans now sent thanks. Footage of Marcus leading the defense spread through civilian channels, showing how one human commander had held the line when entire fleets could not. The Senate, once divided, now spoke of unity. From Earth, congratulations arrived as well. Human governments praised the new alliance, honoring Valoran forces for standing with Terran soldiers on the battlefield. Inside military hospitals, friendships formed. Humans and Valorans shared stories of home, compared cultures, and exchanged small jokes. Lines that had once separated two civilizations slowly began to fade. Alindra visited the recovery bays daily. She walked among the soldiers, listened to them, and offered comfort and recognition. Marcus, once healed enough to walk again, did the same at her side. When they stood together, no one saw a forced diplomatic bond anymore. They saw a united leadership. Some soldiers whispered, "This alliance will last." Others said, "They are not just married, they are commanders in harmony." Alindra did not correct them, When the fleet finally returned home, the arrival felt different. The palace walls did not feel like a cage anymore. They felt like the start of something new. She stood on a balcony with Marcus beside her, looking at the shining city below. The night sky held not fear, but possibility. A marriage formed to avoid war had survived its hardest test, and what began as duty now held respect, trust, and the promise of something warmer, something built not by force, but by shared fire and survival. Together, they had stopped a war. Together, they would build peace. And the galaxy would never forget the day a princess married a human for peace. And then, watched him fight like a fallen star. Not just for her people, but for their future.